the title, before the speeches, before the world started saying his name with strong opinions, Elias Beko was just a young man with tired eyes and a serious face. He met Mihret on a Thursday in Addis Ababa. Mihret sold Buna near a government building, not because she was poor, but because she liked honest work and she liked watching people. She learned how to understand someone just by the way they walked. Some people walked like they were safe. Others walked like they were always expecting bad news. Elias was one of those. The first time he came to her stand, he ordered coffee and didn't look up. He drank like someone who had done it 1,000 times but didn't taste anything. Mihret watched him and said, "You look like you don't sleep." Elias paused, then looked at her properly. "Is it that obvious?" Mihret gave a small smile. "Your eyes are tired and your shoulders are always up." Elias tried to sound professional. "I'm fine." Mihret shook her head as if he was a child lying about a fever. She said, "You're not fine. You're just used to not being fine." That sentence hit Elias like a stone dropped into quiet water. He didn't know why, but he laughed softly. Not because it was funny, but because it was true. He pointed at her coffee pot and said, "So, you're a coffee seller and a mind reader?" Mihret replied, "I'm just a woman who pays attention." Something about her calm made him want to stay longer than he should. And so he did. Elias began returning. He always tried to sound important when he spoke. He used big words like he was writing an exam. One day, he took a sip and said, "Your coffee is exceptional." Mihret lifted her eyebrows. "Exceptional?" Elias nodded, serious. "Yes." Mihret leaned forward like she was sharing a secret. "So, are you drinking coffee? Or are you defending a thesis?" Elias burst out laughing. Real laughter that surprised even him. People turned to look, and he covered his mouth like a boy caught being happy. Mihret smiled, proud, like she had won something. "See," she said, "you're human." Elias looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, he felt light. It was a dangerous feeling, because once you feel light, you start wanting more of it. And Elias began wanting Mihret. Their love didn't start with loud romance. It grew like morning light, slow but sure, until one day you realize that it has filled the whole room. Elias walked her home sometimes, and Mihret would tease him for walking too fast. "Are you running from me?" she asked one evening. Elias pretended to think. "Yes, I'm running from your mouth." Mihret laughed. "Liar, you like it." Elias did like it. He liked her honesty, her quiet jokes, her way of praying. He liked that she didn't treat him like a god or a monster. She treated him like a man. One rainy evening, they stood under a small shelter close enough that they could feel each other's breath. Elias looked at her wet hair and felt shy, which surprised him because he wasn't a shy man. He had faced crowds. He had faced danger. But here he was, afraid of one kiss. Mihret noticed his face and asked, "What?" Elias cleared his throat. "Nothing." Mihret stepped closer. "Elias, your face is doing something." Elias sighed. "Okay, I want to kiss you." Mihret smiled like she had been waiting for him to catch up. "Then kiss me," she said. Elias blinked. "Just like that?" "Yes," she said. "Just like that." So Elias kissed her softly, careful, like she was precious. Mihret placed a hand on his cheek and kissed him back, warm and sure, like she had already decided that this man was hers. When they pulled apart, Mihret whispered, "Don't change into someone I can't recognize." Elias whispered back, "I won't." And Mihret believed him because love makes you believe in promises. They married quietly, with close family, simple food, and prayers that felt like a blanket. On their wedding night, Mihret fixed Elias' collar and said, "Now you are stuck with me." Elias smiled, "I'm the one who's so lucky." Mihret kissed him and said, half joking, but half serious, "Elias, if you ever become famous, don't let it steal you from me, okay?" Elias kissed her forehead, then her lips, soft and slow. I'm yours, he promised. Before any title, I'm yours. Mihret held his face and smiled like she was safe. And for a while, she was. Many years later, Ethiopia was tense and people wanted change. Elias rose into leadership, and suddenly the whole world wanted to watch Ethiopia breathe. At first, it looked like a miracle. Elias opened doors. He spoke about hope. He welcomed people back. He made the nation feel like it might heal. The world clapped. Mihret clapped too. But she clapped quietly at home because she knew what people didn't know. She knew Elias didn't sleep well. She knew he carried stress like a bag on his back. She knew that leadership was not only glory, it was also fear, wearing a suit. So, Mihret created rituals to keep their love alive. When Elias came home late, she would take his phone from his hand and say, first, sit. Second, eat. Third, kiss me. Elias would laugh, tired. Why is kiss number 3? Mihret would say, well, because if I don't remind you, the whole country will take you. Elias would shake his head like she was dramatic, then kiss her anyway. Sometimes the kiss was quick, like, thank you. Sometimes it was longer, like he was trying to remember who he was before the world started pulling him apart. Yes, there were still good days. Days when Elias would come into the kitchen, steal a piece of injera and run like a child while Mihret chased him with a spoon. Days when he would call her my stubborn piece, and she would reply, better be stubborn. This world eats soft things. They laughed. They kissed. They prayed. They made love. And for a moment, it felt like love was stronger than power. And then came the peace deal. Elias made peace with a neighboring country, and the world called it historic. A global peace award came. Cameras flashed. The city celebrated. People said Ethiopia has a new era. But that night, Mihret removed her earring slowly and sat on the edge of their bed without smiling. Elias noticed. You're not happy? He asked. Mihret looked at him. I am happy, she said. I'm just scared. Why? Elias asked gently. Mihret took his hand and kissed his knuckles one by one, like she was trying to calm both of them. Because when the world loves you too much, she said, it can turn on you fast. Elias pulled her close. We'll be fine. Don't worry. Mihret kissed his cheek, then whispered, just don't let power harden you. Elias kissed her lips softly. I won't, he promised. But soon, the cracks started. Not with bullets, with phone calls, with strangers in meetings, with Elias living in the middle of a hug because something urgent came up. And one night, Mihret made a joke to hide her sadness. She kissed him and his phone rang. He pulled away quickly. Mihret forced a small laugh. Your wife is now my co-wife, she joked. Elias tried to smile, but he didn't reach his eyes. Mihret, please, not today, he said. That please sounded like pressure, not love. And that was the first time that Mihret felt afraid of the space between them. In late 2020, conflict began in the north, in a region people called Tembi. It started with anger, then moved into fear, and then became something bigger than anyone could control. Rumors ran faster than truth. People spoke in whispers. Even the air felt tense. Security around the prime minister increased. The house felt different. Guards changed more often. Elias came home less. Then came the night that the guard said, Madam, he's not coming home. Mihret sat in silence for hours praying, not because she wanted to be dramatic, but because she knew something about power. Power attracts people who love light, and it attracts people who love darkness too. At sunrise, Mihret heard a car outside. Black windows, quiet engine. A man stepped out, looked up at her window and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile, it was a message. It was a smile that said, we know where you live. Mihret's hand shook, but she didn't cry. She didn't call friends. She simply made a decision. If they wanted to separate her from Elias, she would go to him first. Mihret entered Elias' office without announcing herself. The assistant tried to block her politely. Mihret said, calm but firm, I'm his wife. Move. She opened the door and walked into a meeting filled with men in expensive suits. Elias stood up quickly. Mihret, what are you doing here? He asked. Mihret's eyes found the smiling man from outside her window. He sat calmly like he belonged everywhere. Mihret pointed. That man was at our house. And the room went silent. The man smiled lightly. Madam, you're mistaken. I've never been to your home. Mihret's heart beat hard. I saw you. The man turned to Elias. Sir, she's under stress. People imagine things in times like this. Elias looked confused, and that confusion scared Mihret because she suddenly realized something. If Elias didn't recognize the man, then he wasn't a part of the normal circle. So, why was he sitting in a meeting with her husband? Before anyone could speak again, the man leaned forward and said something smooth and terrifying. He said, Sir, with respect, this is exactly why family should be protected from state matters. They become emotional. Mihret felt a chill because the man didn't just want to scare her. He wanted Elias to doubt her. Elias frowned, then looked at Mihret. He said, Mihret, please, talk to me. Mihret swallowed and said, Elias, I am not here to embarrass you. I'm here because someone is watching our home. The man sighed like he was tired of drama. Sir, this is not evidence. Elias stared at the man for a long moment and then said quietly, Who are you? Who invited you into this meeting? The man smiled in change. He said, I represent concerned partners. Elias's voice hardened. Partners of what? The man leaned back, still smiling. Partners of stability. Mihret felt her stomach twist. Stability sounded like a good word, but she had lived long enough to know that sometimes people use good words to hide bad plans. Elias stood up slowly. Leave. The man blinked. Sir. Elias repeated colder. Leave now. The man rose, adjusted his jacket, and looked at Mihret with that same smile. As he walked out, he said softly, just loud enough for her to hear, You love him. That's cute. But love doesn't run a country. The door closed. Mihret's knees felt weak. Elias looked at her. Mihret? Who is he? Mihret whispered, I don't know. And that was the scary part because if you don't know who's entering your husband's meetings, then you don't know who is really holding his power. That night, when Elias came home briefly, Mihret didn't greet him with jokes. She greeted him with truth. She took his face in her hands and said, Elias, you need to listen to me. Something is wrong. Elias looked exhausted. Everything is wrong, he said. Then Elias looked at her and said something that broke Mihret's heart. Mihret, you were protecting me. Mihret's voice cracked. I was protecting us. Elias pulled her into his arms, and for a moment, he wasn't prime minister. He was just a man holding the woman who had loved him enough to carry a dangerous secret. He kissed her forehead, then kissed her lips softly like an apology. I'm sorry I doubted you, he whispered. Mihret kissed him back, longer this time, like she was telling him, I'm still here. Don't leave me. The next days moved like a storm forming slowly. Elias started noticing strange things. Meetings he didn't approve, papers he didn't sign, decisions being pushed too fast. And then, one evening, something happened that scared him more than any rumor. A false report came in, an emergency that would have forced Elias to announce strict rules and give certain people more control. Elias stared at the report, then at his chief advisor, Dawit, a man who had been with him for years. Dawit said calmly, Sir, we must act immediately. Strong action. Mihret, sitting quietly in the corner, felt something twist inside her. Dawit's voice was too eager. Mihret stood slowly. Elias, she said, ask him who sent the information. Dawit smiled. Madam, with respect, this is not your place. Mihret smiled back, sweet, but her eyes were sharp. Oh, Dawit, she said softly, don't worry. I'm not trying to lead Ethiopia. I'm trying to save my husband. Elias looked at David. Who sent it? David hesitated for half a second. That half second was enough because Elias finally saw what he had ignored for months. You see, fear makes you trust the wrong people, but love makes you see clearly. Elias's voice became quiet and dangerous. He said, David, step aside. David's smile faded. Sir, Elias repeated, step aside. And suddenly everything made sense. The smiling stranger was not the real enemy. He was only the front face. The real enemy was someone close enough to touch the steering wheel. That night, Elias came home, and Mihret knew something had changed because he walked into the house differently. He didn't look like a man running from problems. He looked like a man ready to face them. Mihret met him at the door. She tried to joke because that's how she loved him. So, you still remember why you leave, she said. Elias gave a tired smile. I missed my wife. Mihret's eyes softened. She said, I missed my husband. Elias held her waist, pulled her close, and kissed her slow and deep, like he had been thirsty for her peace. When he pulled away, his forehead rested against hers. Mihret, he whispered, they want to turn me into something hard. Mihret touched his cheek. Then, don't let them. Elias swallowed. It may cost me. Mihret's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady. Elias, I didn't marry a crown. I married a heart. If you lose your heart, then what is left for me? Elias closed his eyes like her words were a knife and a healing at the same time. Then he said the sentence that became his choice. I will not buy control with cruelty. Mihret let out a shaky breath. Then she smiled through tears and said, good, because if you become cruel, I will still love you, but I will not respect you. Elias laughed softly, the way he used to laugh years ago at the coffee stand. Mihret smiled. So you can still laugh. Elias kissed her again, quick, like a promise. I'm still here, he whispered. Help me stay here. Ethiopia did not heal in one day. Real life does not work like movies. But what changed was Elias' heart. He began removing people who enjoyed chaos. He began listening to quieter voices. He began choosing steps that reduced suffering instead of feeding anger. Some people called him weak. Some people called him confused. Some people tried to shame him. But at night, when he came home, Mihret would hold his face and say, come back to yourself. And Elias would kiss her like he was returning from a long war. Weeks later, the same guard who once told Mihret, the Prime Minister is not coming home, stood at the gate again, but this time, his face looked lighter. Madame, he said, Sir is on his way. Mihret's chest rose with relief. When Elias arrived, he didn't rush inside. He stood in the doorway and looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time again. Mihret crossed her arms and said, teasing, so, now you're coming home like a normal man, right? Elias smiled. He said, I'm trying. Mihret walked up to him, adjusted his collar the way she always did, and whispered, keep trying. Elias kissed her forehead. Then he kissed her lips, slow and steady, while the guards pretended not to see. And in that moment, the country, the cameras, the enemies, the meetings, everything disappeared. There was only a husband and wife holding each other like people who had survived something heavy. Later that night, Elias sat in their prayer room and said softly, Mihret, thank you. Mihret asked, for what? Elias looked at her with tired eyes that still held love. For reminding me that power is not the biggest thing. A human heart is. Mihret smiled gently. Good, because Ethiopia does not need a stone. Ethiopia needs a man. Elias nodded, and his voice broke slightly. He said, and I need my wife. Mihret leaned forward and kissed him soft and warm, just like the first time. Then she whispered the morale of their whole story in one simple line. Love doesn't run a country, Elias, but it can save the person running it.